All but Monday Night Football Week 12 in the books. Let's recap what we saw over the weekend. A ton of great stuff with the Jaguars comeback victory. Trevor Lawrence looking really good out there. Did the Jets and maybe even the Packers find their quarterbacks? Tons of overtime. There were shutouts. There was just about everything in Week 12. Coming up right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on Twitter if you want to get involved in our mailbag episode, which will be Wednesday this week. Back to our regular programming here. Hope everyone had a fantastic holiday. I had a great holiday, eating a lot and watching a whole bunch of football. We'll get into those football games here on today's episode that is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code Locked On. Cincinnati Bengals at the Tennessee Titans. No points in the first quarter. Both teams put up a couple of scores, 10 points. It was 10-10 at the half, and it was the Bengals that were able to put another 7, and only the Titans able to put up a couple threes that made the difference in the second half, 20-16. The Bengals now at 7-4. The hard-charging Bengals, by the way, in the AFC North, and the Tennessee Titans both at 7-4 after 12 weeks.
I think this is a very telling game, and it lived up to the billing. I mean, it's a playoff rematch. Remember, Burrow got sacked, 9 times in that game or whatever last year? And a lot of angles here I want to dig into this one is, going into Tennessee, a Vrabel coach team is a hard game. It just is now. I mean, the Titans are really physical in the line of scrimmage. You have to stop Henry to be in the game like this. And in their building, this time of year, the Titans are just hard to play against. So they particularly talented? No, but they're hard to play against in a Belichickian fashion. I've been very hard on Taylor, the Bengals head coach, but I think he's developing very quickly. He was a young, overmatched head coach for his first couple of years in the league, but you're allowed to get better. And I think he's gotten better. I think he has very good staffs. We know that Burrow came into the league as a very mature prospect, and that showed immediately. But he is evolving at a unbelievably rapid pace. Like, he doesn't take sacks anymore, and his line's getting a little bit better. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way, but he doesn't sacrifice aggression. He had really bad numbers against too high, but now he's just checking it down and getting the ball where it needs to be, even without Mixon, even without Chase. And those guys are coming back on the horizon. T. Higgins is a star. Boy, could Tennessee use a T. Higgins. They have nothing. But I want to focus a little bit on the Bengals defense. I mean, everyone saw the touchdown the Titans got. Henry got loose, but it was a throw. And Treylon Burks falls on it for his first career touchdown. For whatever reason, you don't get any points in that for fantasy. I was a little upset about that, but such is life.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, he scored a touchdown. Give him 6 points or whatever.
Oh, man.
I'm like, what's up with that? And I'm sitting here looking at the box score, and he is not credited with a touchdown. I don't know how that works, but whatever. Such is life. I didn't start him, but I was just
He's credited with the fumble recovery, but it doesn't show up as a receiving or a rushing touchdown or anything. Yeah, you're right.
Right. So it's just a phantom touchdown, I guess, in the stat sheet, an anomaly. But anyway, Henry had that big play as a receiver. But this is the key of the game. 17 carries for 38 yards. Tennessee's not beating anyone that way, and I studied this Bengals team to no end last week and had a lot of stats of DJ Reader being a difference maker for them. Last week against the Steelers, he was kind of half himself. He was back in it. He was awesome in this game. They have it's kind of a no-name defense, but Taylor Britt, Wilson, the linebacker, Pratt has come on like gangbusters. Guys like Von Bell and Mike Hilton. But Reader, to me, is a star that no one talks about. Bengals are just really hard to play against. They're good in all facets.
Sam Hubbard
Yeah.
with a sack in that game. Yeah, just sort of, the names, but there's no, it's not a star-studded cast on the defensive side of the ball at all.
No, not at all. And I really think the Bengals are now in that Niner, Cowboy, Dolphin neighborhood. They just have a really hard schedule coming up.
Yeah, and they're in that group of teams that you're probably not super excited to play right now, starting to play their best ball, which is the right time. You get deep into November, into December now. That's when you want to be playing your best football. And it sure as heck looks like the Cincinnati Bengals are, and they're getting some reinforcements back as well on the offensive side of the ball. And if their defense continues to play like it has, and look, Tennessee Titans isn't a powerhouse offense, but look, that's you have to win multiple ways in the NFL, right? You have to be able to beat a team that has Derrick Henry rolling out there. You have to beat a team that has Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes rolling out there, and they can chuck the ball on you, So it's nice to see teams down the stretch prove they can win in different ways. They can put up enough points in games where they need to shoot out a little bit. They can win a grinder of a game like this one, and the Cincinnati Bengals are starting to prove that.
Yep, and I think we said this last week, but I believe it even more now. I'm going to take the first 2 games of the season out. I mean, Burrow was a disaster opening day against the Steelers, throwing picks left and right. He had just come off an appendectomy. He hadn't played football in like 5 weeks. But the first 2 weeks of the year were predictably very rough for Burrow. Since then, he's been the second best quarterback in the league besides Mahomes. I mean, he's better than Allen. He's better than Hurts. I mean, that's the level we're talking about here with Burrow this year.
Cleveland Browns with a win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers still with a commanding lead in the NFC South at 5-6. Overtime win for the Browns with Jacoby Brissett. And is that the last we see of Jacoby Brissett in a Cleveland Browns uniform, starting at quarterback at least, because the suspension is now officially over for Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to call out Brissett as having a very, very successful season. We know it's now Watson. After 700 days of rest, he goes to play the Texans, which looked a little scary back then, but Houston's not even an NFL team anymore, so they'll win that game. Great win for the Browns. Chubb, Cooper, Garrett, Brissett, the guys that they're invested in, I thought all played extremely well. Njoku makes a tremendous catch. Tampa might be broken, though. Like, when this goes to overtime, I'm like, Brady versus Brissett? I'll take TB all day long in this one. Yeah. And no, I mean, that's not the way it went.
It's like, how did you only have 17 points? They went down, I think, on their first drive, and it was a touchdown pass from Brady to
I think
Chris
Godwin. Godwin looks great.
Yeah, and
they were running the ball.
Put up 17 points. That's it. Yeah. They had a huge run from the rookie running back, White on the first drive. Then stopped running the ball, stopped being able to run the ball after that. The Bucs are a weird team right now because I keep expecting to see it, even as much more so than the Packers, who we'll probably get to a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about that throughout the week as well, with what's going on with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. But the Bucs, I just keep waiting to see it, and it's more and more seeming like they're not going to show us this year.
I thought coming off the bye, they're going to finish the season strong. Maybe they're not a contender, but they're going to run away with the division, maybe win a playoff game. I don't feel that way at all. I'm a Todd Bowles fan. I've mentioned many times. He and I were on the Browns staff together that year. I was with the Browns. I don't think he's a head coach, and I don't know the exact sequence, but the way he handled the clock at the end of this game was criminal, and I think his seat should be hot.
It's hard for me because I don't know how much, because Bruce Arians is still around, and he's still in the building, and he's still there, and he's still walking around the sidelines. You see him, right? How much different is it actually than last year mechanically, just because he's still there? Does he need Bruce Arians gone to be the true head coach? Is that maybe hampering things? But
Jets fans would probably tell you he's not a head coach either.
Yeah, it's starting to look more and more like
coordinator.
And look, talent-wise, you look at the Bucs where they're at and some of these other teams, and I said they have a commanding lead. They have a half-game lead on the 5-7 Atlanta Falcons. I mean, this division is ridiculous right now.
That's amazing.
Everybody's in the negative in point differential now, that including Tampa Bay, who's -3 on the season, and they're still going to make the playoffs. So I don't know if you're going to fire a playoff coach in his first year with the team, but there are a lot of coaches in the league that just are better coordinators than they are head coaches, and maybe he's one of those. And he's got a really good shot to prove he's not that. And still some time down the stretch, and you got the all-time greatest quarterback and a lot of talent on that team. You would think they'd be playing at a lot better level right now.
Me too. I just think that I'm kind of done with excuses. Oh, Brady doesn't have his left guard or whatever. Like, I get it, but they should be better than this. Defense played well, but this is a disappointing team.
Speaking of done with excuses, I think the Packers are in the same boat, and now Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, man.
Did he take the last snap as quarterback of the Green Bay Packers Sunday night? We'll get to that next. A couple of overtime games, another overtime game. 49ers shutout and really changing the NFC West playoff picture with a loss to the Seahawks, or the Seahawks loss in overtime to the Las Vegas Raiders. All that and more coming up next. This episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you are going to love. Find Block Forever now, wherever you get your podcast. Block Forever is a brand new podcast from former NFL All-Pro Ryan Khalil and Audible. The former offensive lineman Khalil takes the conversation about football to the next level, gives football fans an insider's look at the game through the eyes of the greatest players and personalities of all time. Khalil sits down with star players, coaches, former pros across the league to get real about what happens on the field and behind the scenes, inside the locker room, during team meetings, all that good stuff. And even back at the hotel, which is probably where some of the best stories are going to come from. New episodes of Block Forever will be recorded and released every week ahead of Thursday Night Football, available for free on Audible or wherever you get your podcasts. Catch the full Block Forever series, available anywhere you get your podcast, available everywhere, starting right now. Audible, get in the game. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, it's available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. It was the Philadelphia Eagles that were able to upend the Green Bay Packers. It was a high-scoring affair, 40-33. Jalen Hurts is just like, look, MVP. Like, I'm the MVP right now is what he's trying to say. 157 yards on the ground to go with 153 and a couple touchdowns through the air. Whatever you need Jalen Hurts to do, he's able to do it. I just really love the leadership he's providing. I love how complete the Eagles team is right now. They've addressed so many needs on this team. They'll get Jordan Davis back. That'll help that interior. They already brought in Sue and then, some players there. So really, I don't see a ton of weaknesses with the Eagles, but all of the weaknesses on the Packers just continue to show. Aaron Rodgers already with the bad thumb, and then he has the ribs, and he walks off the field, Matt, late in this game. And Jordan Love comes in and looks pretty good. Like, Jordan Love's had plenty of time now to incubate and practice and be ready to play NFL football. He has the height, weight, speed, arm. He can sling it, and it's sometimes easy to forget because you don't see him. It's like, oh, yeah, he's got the great arm. That's why they drafted him in the first round, right? He's got all the ability. Comes out, boom, right away. You see the young connection of Love to Watson, who runs away from the Eagles defense and scores a touchdown. And actually, that game was closer than it felt at the end. But did we see the last of Aaron Rodgers as quarterback of the Green Bay Packers? This is a 4-8 team now that is not mathematically eliminated, but they're pretty much out of it, right? Yeah. So the Green Bay Packers, is it now the Jordan Love era?
I don't know that answer, and I'm not sure which way I would lean. A lot of that depends on Rodgers' ego and Rodgers' body right now. Unfortunately, that matters in this situation. Sort of has some Stafford-like feel to it too. Like, it just seems inevitable that you might as well not play the star right now that's fighting a bunch of injuries. Couple positives we'll start with the Packers, because they're not easy to find. They ran the ball pretty well. Aaron Jones is as good as ever. Christian Watson looks less fluky every day and looks like a real weapon. And you mentioned Love. He looked phenomenal. And I guess they quoted Rodgers on the broadcast last night about, well, boy, Jordan's really been working on his mechanics and his fundamentals. Those were lacking coming out of school. And that showed. Very comfortable, calm feet. His delivery, his accuracy, excellent. I had big questions about those things, what seems like 100 years ago, but as a prospect. So that's very interesting. I want to see more and more Jordan Love as a fan. You let up 363 yards on the ground, though. With a defense that is all first-round picks. This is criminal to me. I understand that the Eagles run the ball extremely well. And wow, is their O-line great and dominated this game. But you gave up 363 on the ground and like 100 to Hurts. It's running through huge holes in the first quarter. I know this was a 7-point game, but it felt like the Packers had no chance at all.
Felt the same way. Yeah. With with that run defense too, you mentioned
Brutal.
that defense, like that's the first guy who's going to go as a defensive coordinator.
Has to.
Because that can't happen. And okay, the Eagles are a good running team. Well, they had their best running game against your defense, which was supposed to be one of the best defenses in the league. So, that's the unfortunate side of things. That's why this season's not going to go in a good direction. Aaron Rodgers needs to be healthy if you're going to plug him back in. You've got to see, we talked about it last week, actually, about how Jordan Love has to play this year. We thought it'd be maybe, the last 2 games of the year. But now you have this opportunity. Jordan Love comes in. If he plays good, you can't pull him back out. If he plays bad, what's the point of bringing Aaron Rodgers in when you're out of it anyway? Get him healthy for next year. So to me, how good Jordan Love plays down the stretch is how likely it is Aaron Rodgers is the starting quarterback next year for the Green Bay Packers. And, if Rodgers wants to still play, maybe that's going to have to start to be for another franchise, especially what we saw in the past with Rodgers. And he seemed kind of wishy-washy on whether he wanted to be there. They did sign the new deal, but it looks like post June 1st, there is some possibilities to make this happen in the offseason if they want with Aaron Rodgers and move him on. I just, more than ever, seeing how the team has played, seeing Rodgers, just his demeanor and his body language, I feel like it's done there. I don't know if Rodgers is done as an NFL quarterback, but I think it really is the Jordan Love era now.
It could be. Real quick, back to the Packer defense. I just wanted to double check these facts. Since 2012, every one of their first round picks has been on defense except for Jordan Love. Like, that's not okay.
No, I mean, it's not okay.
It's not okay.
No, not at all. You know what is pretty okay, Matt? How about Trevor Lawrence having the best of his young career, making the plays as needed, 18 fourth quarter points to bring those Jacksonville Jaguars back to defeat a good team in the Baltimore Ravens. The Jaguars are 4-7, aren't really going anywhere this year, but this is exactly what you want to see if you are a coach in management, a fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars. See that number 1 overall pick start to look like the generational guy that you thought he was supposed to be coming out of the draft and going and beating a good football team in the AFC, and the now 7-4 Ravens, who are tied with the Cincinnati Bengals atop the AFC North. 321 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions for Trevor Lawrence.
Travis Etienne gets hurt early on too. I mean, and that's a good Ravens defense. It throws a lot at you. He got better and better as the game went on. It was a dominant player in the fourth quarter. And I know people don't want to hear, sporting cast, all that. Like, last year was criminal what happened to Lawrence. We all know that. And it's much better now. But still, he's getting the ball to James Hasty and Zay Jones and Jamal Agnew. That's the supporting cast, right? Yeah, whatever his name is. Right?
That's kind of the point.
That's kind of the point, right?
You know his name, right? I know his name because he's a former 49er. He's a nice player, but
sure, he's okay.
Supporting cast.
Yeah, Zay Jones is the leading receiver, Right. And I'm just sitting there going, he's going to have Calvin Ridley next year and maybe a first-round receiver. Like, look out. This could be something. Ravens, they have a good D, but they lose a lot of games late. That's just like their 5th or 6th game that they had a pretty substantial lead that they lost. And the offense is a disaster. I mean, it's all Lamar. And I bet if you watch the All-22, Andrews gets doubled every play. And, we were just talking about the weapons around Lawrence. I mean, it's like Deshaun Jackson, DeMarcus Robinson, and let's throw the ball to Patrick Ricard. What's going on here? I mean, this is bad. The offense is really bad.
Yeah, the offense has gone to a place that just seems, it's a lot of moving parts and not a lot of results almost. You know what I mean? It looks like a bad pickup basketball game at times when I'm watching them on offense.
Very much. And it's like the bad pickup basketball team is, we got one good dude. Let's just get it to him. And if he doesn't, if Lamar's not Superman, so be it.
If he's missing his shots, then you don't win. Right.
Yeah, then you lose. Right.
Mm-hmm. The overtime game here, this is an interesting one to me with the Raiders. And first of all, it's a fascinating game just because the way it ended with an 86-yarder by Josh Jacobs after they had already missed a field goal in overtime to win this game for the Raiders, who are now, I feel like every team in the NFL is 4-7 or 7-4 right now. The Raiders are now 4-7, 40-34 win over the Seahawks. The Seahawks went into their bye week a couple weeks ago, and on tomorrow's show, we're going to get way more into what's going on with the standings and all the divisions. But the Seahawks were in first place by themselves going into a bye week. And now just 2 weeks later, they're not even the 7th seed in the playoffs. The season ended today at 6-5. Washington leapfrogs them. Niners are in first place after a shutout win in the West. I don't know how to feel about either one of these teams, except for not super confident, but a really enjoyable way to watch this game end.
Yeah. I mean, I think Seattle's gradually coming back to earth as a fringe playoff team, outkicked their coverage a little bit early in the season. Young, good story, well coached, all those things, fine. Maybe next year is going to be really promising for them as Denver keeps losing and they end up with another high pick plus their own. I mentioned Bowles being a coordinator, not coach. I had a list of 4 or 5 of those guys a couple of weeks ago, including McDaniels. That might have been a little too harsh. I mean, the Raiders, I think, deserve some credit. They're probably not going anywhere this year, but they just put 40 points up without Waller or Renfro. I mean, like, they're coming around, and they lost so many close games to start the season. And if you look at their roster, with the exception of maybe 5 or 6 guys, it's bottom 5 or 6. I mean, they haven't hit on a first-round pick in 100 years.
Right.
So
well, Jacobs is now like kind of making good too.
Right.
By the way, so with that 86-yarder, 2 touchdowns, he ended up with 229 yards on the ground, 33 carries. How's that for workhorse?
How about that?
But then also led the team in receiving, 6 catches for 74 more yards. Dude had 300 total yards.
It's amazing. He's a league winner in fantasy. He's a free agent after this year. I think you have to franchise him. I mean, he's like the entire offense outside of Adams, and you probably won't like it, but I mean, extending him's bad business. Here's one note, though, about McDaniels I think we have to give him credit for. As you mentioned, he has 6 catches. He's got a bunch of catches on the year. Coming into this year, he had 1 career catch on a 3rd down. Like, I never understood why he was never throwing the ball at the NFL level, because he was a really good receiver at Bama.
We got to move on to some other games next. We've got a shutout by the 49ers defense, which is quietly becoming the best defense in the league down the stretch at the perfect time. And the best, we've talked about some good quarterbacks. How about the best quarterback in week 12 next? Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Maybe you're having that hangover on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. There's no NFL football, right? But guess what? There is daily fantasy with Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super easy. You can make entries in less than 60 seconds. You are not putting together entire fantasy teams. You're not competing against other people. You're just finding projections available at Prize Picks on the app or at prizepicks.com. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than those Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on that entry. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch, including, of course, tons of projections on the NFL, NBA, PGA, college football, college basketball, women's hoops. You've got Euro basketball on there, NASCAR, MMA, boxing, disc golf, cricket, tennis, you name it, you can find it. Esports as well at Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. The Niners have played the Saints, the Rams, the Cardinals, the really banged up Chargers. So looking really good right now, but the question is, how will that defense look if they get another chance at the Chiefs, say, in the playoffs, or, the Eagles or the Cowboys or some of these other good teams in the NFL? I think the 49ers are a scary team, and the defense is playing at a high level, but I just still want to see one more against a really good opponent that's putting up points on offense.
I can understand that. I mean, you're greedy. You're trying to win this whole thing as a Niners guy. I get that, but again, I mentioned the Bengals tier with like Dallas and Miami. San Francisco's absolutely right in there and knocking on the door of best team in the NFC. Kind of like the Eagles game, I felt like the Niners were never really threatened in this one. I mean, the defense is so aggressive, and this felt like the Saints had nothing going on offense that they could really hang their hat on. Maybe I'm wrong about this. You watched every snap. I didn't, that the offense didn't have to take a lot of chances, had this game in tow, and then Mitchell went out, and the offense was fine, but you didn't win a lot of fantasy games with Niners or anything in this one. But
right.
it seemed like a business trip.
Yeah, I said at some point in the first half, it was like the first team to 4 is going to win. When it was 3-0 49ers. Defense was playing pretty well too.
Yeah.
And the Niners right before the end of the half scored and made it 10-0. It was like, well, okay, that game's over.
That's enough.
We kicked another field goal in the second half, and that was it. No more scoring. Yeah. So that's the big story there. Niners in a commanding spot now, in control of their destiny, have a lot of tiebreakers with wins over NFC opponents and division opponents, especially there. So looking good for the 49ers to take home the West this year after this week with a big Seahawks loss.
Absolutely. And you vaguely mentioned the Chiefs. That was another game to me that was just one team's noticeably better. Business trip, roll that ball out there. You win it, almost every time. Was never real threatening.
Better team, home team. Don't screw it up and lose the game and go win and get ready for next week. That was the vibe with that Chiefs-Rams game.
Absolutely. The Rams are a disaster.
How about the Jets and Mike White? How good is Mike White? Because that Jets team starts to look pretty scary with all the weapons they have, and Garrett Wilson with a couple of touchdowns in this one, and Mike White going 315 yards on only 28 attempts. He was 22 of 28. Efficiency, making big plays, 3 touchdown passes as the Jets roll over the Bears 31-10, who were starting their own quarterback. We didn't get to see Justin Fields against Zach Wilson, but what we got was maybe better quarterback play with Mike White, especially versus Trevor Siemian there. What do you think with the Jets and Mike White?
I'm intrigued. I don't want to overreact. I mean, we definitely, and plus we saw some really good moments from White last year. I think he unlocked what a star Garrett Wilson is truly, and to a lesser degree, Elijah Moore and Conklin, and they got guys. He was phenomenal. I mean, his processing, his accuracy, his command. They ran the ball well. But I mentioned the Bears have the second overall pick right now. I mean, without Fields, they're almost Texan-like in terms of what they're trotting out there. I mean, that defense is awful.
And they traded away 2 impact starters at the deadline on defense, and they've got injuries besides. And then I think it was Jackson, the safety, Jackson, that went down. And once he went down, they might have had like a couple or maybe even no kind of starters left on defense. They're in a bad place on that side of the ball. So and look, Mike White was a good story last year. Remember, he had like a really good game just like this, and he ended up throwing more interceptions than touchdowns last year. I went back to look at the stats. So people are like, hey, next Tom Brady here, right? 5th round pick or whatever Mike White was. I was like, wait, did he play that well last year? Went back and looked at the stats, 66%, 5 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Let's see some more of Mike White, but it was a nice showing, and he at least earned the opportunity to keep Zach Wilson on the bench with that performance. I mean, there's no way you can go away from Mike White now.
Clearly. And I assume you run it out the rest of the year and figure things out from there. But I just pulled up the box score. I mean, these were the tackle leaders for Chicago's defense. Someone named Sanborn, Houston, Carson, Morrow, Hicks, Pennell, those, I mean, they're the Bears are doomed. I mean, they're going to pick very high in the draft, and I wouldn't rush Fields back, but clearly he's a difference maker for them.
So we're not going to be able to get to all the games in depth here, but the Dolphins did knock off the Texans 30-15, which was,
destroyed them.
An eventuality there and sat everybody in the second half. But the Commanders is a big one because the Commanders now at 7-5 are in a really good spot. They've got at least a full game, if not 2 games lead, I think. Oh, yeah, 1 full game over the Seahawks and then 2 full games over anybody else in the NFC for that last playoff wildcard spot. All NFC East teams looking good for a playoff spot right now. Commanders at 7-5 beat the Falcons 19-13.
Yeah, again, good coaching, adequate quarterback play, kind of like the Jets. You have some weapons, but you have a dominant defensive front. You outrush the team that all they can do is run the ball, and Atlanta is pretty helpless if they can't run the ball better than their opponent.
A whole lot more on those playoff seedings, what the draft order looks like. Where are these teams now after 12 weeks on tomorrow's episode? And, of course, get those mailbag questions in for us this week here on Peacock and Williamson. Talk to you then.